Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Today is January 28th, 2014. The discussion begins the 14th year of Conversation with Lee Presser. As we begin 2014, a huge number of Americans are without a proper job. Yet, according to many sources, there are about 3 million positions which remain unfilled because employers cannot find qualified applicants. Examples of what I'm referring to include welders, industrial computer operators, machine operators, and people capable of maintaining industrial machines. Here to discuss why there are not more qualified technical workers available is today's guest, Bill Gagen. Mr. Gagen is the Director of Workforce Development in the Selsius Corporate and Career Training Division of Southwestern Illinois College, that's SWIC. He has 20 years' experience with workforce development, including a previous position in the Employment and Training Services Division of St. Clair County, Illinois. Since 2007, he has managed the Southwestern Illinois WorkNet centers in Belleville, at the East St. Louis Community College Center, and at the SWIC campuses in Belleville and Granite City. Bill Gagen, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you.
So in that introduction, I mentioned these 3 million jobs. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I mentioned this 3 million jobs, and he says, well, I've heard that number, but how do I know that's not an urban myth? So I bring it to you, long experience. Are there employers out there who are dying for employees that can't find them, and is this number somewhere around 3 million?
I can't give you an exact figure, but there are employers who are looking for employees. We know that. And SWIC has a very big program where we do that type of training. You mentioned welding. We have a very large program for that. We have all the new machines that we're able to use to provide those employers the kind of employees they want. But we also know, as a practical matter, that a lot of employers are looking for people that they can train themselves. That a lot of employers have told me the biggest thing they're looking for is an employee who has, Dr. Beverly Ford, who was an expert in this area, told me one time, employees who will show up, suck up, and dress up. And they can't train an employee who doesn't show up for work. They want
is that a real problem? I mean, I find that incredible that somebody would, go to be an employee and then they don't bother to show up for work. But
a lot of the people that I work with are what we call people in transition. Those are older workers who've been laid off from a job, or workers who are trying to restart their life. Mm-hmm. Those people, that's usually not a problem, mm-hmm. because they've already had jobs, or they're dedicated to improving their own life. So they
have
will.
That skill.
Right. Now, perhaps sometimes kids right out of high school, not necessarily as skilled at that particular aspect of work as you would imagine. And that's a societal problem. When you and I were growing up, our parents didn't give us an option on those kinds of things. They made sure that we were where we were supposed to be. Right. And again, with society being the way it is, I'm not sure that's as much of a priority now as it once was.
And many of us, even in high school, or even before that, had jobs of some kind or another, which actually required us to show up and perform tasks.
Right, and we did too. I mean, but at the same time, again, it's a societal issue with both parents either working or perhaps maybe one working and one trying to find work. They don't have as much direction as they used to. This is a problem we can't solve in education. I mean, this is society's problem. Mm-hmm. When we get students at SWIC, as I said, the students that I work with, for the most part, that's not a problem, because they're either trying to get themselves trained to get another job, or to get themselves a better life for their kids as well.
So in your program, it sounds like you're dealing with established adults, not not kids right straight out of high school. Am I reading that correctly?
For the most part, yes.
So tell us a little bit more about what is this Selsius program?
Well, Selsius, the program that we're a part of, or the division of the university we're a part of, does corporate and career training for businesses. In other words, they'll do, if the company needs some computer training, they will do that, go into the company and help their employees learn a new computer skill if they've changed computer systems or gone to Windows 8 instead of Windows 7 or whatever that stuff is that they do. Plus, we also provide leadership training. If we know that a lot of people may be good workers, but when they get promoted because they're a good worker and they have no idea how to lead.
How to manage.
Or manage. Right. We do that with, transitioning from employee to manager, that kind of thing. And Selsius provides that kind of training to local businesses. We also do, as part of that, provide some training in the technical fields and welding and things like that for the local businesses. We try to keep tune with the local businesses as to what they need, and that Selsius performs those functions.
So it sounds like you are the job training group for many local businesses. Is that right?
We try to be, yes.
Yes. And how do you find out what these businesses need? Do they come to you, or do you have to go out and cold call them?
Both. Now, I'm just part of Selsius, so yeah, that might be a better question for my boss. But I can tell you that they're out talking to businesses every day, trying to find out what their needs are, and as part of that, providing solutions to those needs. Anytime with the college that we have, we are dedicated to providing employees to the local businesses, because it doesn't do any good to train somebody if they don't get a job when they're finished. So the deans of all of our programs at the college, I know, either have committees that they deal with of employees that are in the same fields that they're training people for, or directly talk to businesses constantly to find out what they need.
Now, you said you're dealing with older people as opposed to young ones who are just coming out of high school. My understanding of the kids who are coming out of high school and they come to the community college, that in many cases they're not prepared for college?
I think, again, that's a societal question. We find, and even the students that we deal with, the older students, just about all of our students require some little bit of training to get up to speed in math. Most are okay in reading, but just about everybody needs a little upgrade in math.
Now, are we talking higher end math, or we're talking about, division?
Some of both. And I like to say that our assessment test that our students have to go through in order to take classes at SWIC is just to find out what these folks have forgotten since high school. I'm sure if you go back 10 years to what you knew when you graduated from high school, they'd do much better. But again, our older students just need to brush up on some of the things that they're going to need to get into the next level of math in their training.
Because many of these jobs are highly technical and math oriented.
Most jobs today require training beyond high school. And that's where the community colleges come in. We often feel, and maybe we're patting ourselves on the back, I hope it's not beating, but patting ourselves on the back, that we provide a better bang for the buck. That we let the student get those skills that they need beyond high school, the ones that the employers are looking for, at a reasonable cost.
So just, briefly describe, somebody is coming to you, let's create a scenario. 30 years old, they used to have a good job, making, fairly decent money, but that company left town or shut down or something, and so here they are, and they've got to figure out something else to do. So they, somewhere they heard about SWIC. So what happens from there? They heard about SWIC, they come in the door.
I can give you two scenarios, I think, that point out what that kind of activity looks like. We had a young woman, well, she's younger than me, so she was older, about the age you were talking about.
It works that way, doesn't it?
And she came in our office, and she was obviously very nervous. She'd worked for a company for many years, and everything that she had done was on paper. They were the old-fashioned, a pencil and a spreadsheet kind of thing, a real spreadsheet, not a computer spreadsheet. And she was in our office looking to get into some training to do the same kind of things, but on a computer. She was scared to death. She was literally shaking and crying in our office because she didn't know how she was going to do on the math test and the test that she had to take to continue to take classes at SWIC. She was a straight A student. She now has her degree and has a very good paying job. So that's one set of students that we get. Another set are people in the computer field, for example, who've worked in computers the whole time they've had their job, but because they actually did the work, they never bothered to get any certifications in the various fields that you need in order to prove to another employer that you can do the work. This particular individual came to us, had all the experience on his resume, but he couldn't prove it. He came to SWIC, he did an advanced degree option so he could take just a few classes to get his certificates, and he got a job shortly thereafter making about $80,000 a year. So that's not 100% of the time, but that just gives you an example of the kind of things that happen in our office and what we do.
Now, the people who come to SWIC to learn welding, would these be kids right out of high school, or are these adults who are looking to transition from their current work to something else?
Both. I think there aren't as many technical trainings in high schools as there used to be. You know, funding or whatever, they don't do it as much. But we also find people that are coming to us who've done welding in their jobs, but they've never been trained to do it other than on the job training. And again, they have to show a future employer that they actually can do it, which is where our welding degrees and certificates come in.
I see.
There's a grant being the Madison County Employment and Training is running, but it includes a number of different counties in this area called ATIM, which is Advanced Training in Manufacturing. And as part of that, we're doing a lot of welding training with them for people to demonstrate that kind of activity will move the person right into employment.
Now, I also mentioned machine operators. What sort of training do we have for those?
We have training in machinist, training. We've got training in numerical controls, all those kinds of things that are advanced machining.
Explain what a numerical control is for people who don't understand.
I wish I knew. You'd have to talk to the dean of that program who could tell you. I've seen all their machines, and they punch something in, and actually the machine does the work. Not the old days when you just had a rotator or lathe, I think, whatever they call it, and they actually did it by hand. Now they just type things into a computer and it does it. So that's the thing they have to learn. Well, that's one of the things that
I've heard is that in this modern age of industry, that in fact you have to have a more educated machinist, because his job is not necessarily to create a shape the way that machinists of the past did. His job is to babysit a machine that he's going to tell, I want you to do this thing and create this shape.
The old days of the dirty machine shop with dust everywhere and that kind of thing is no longer existent. Because they use computers, they have to keep things fairly clean. And of course, that's one of the problems you face with, and I know when you get back to high school students, the big problem with getting youth into the manufacturing areas, their parents don't want them to do it. Their parents may have been in manufacturing their life, and as my father, who was a red truck driver, said to me, he didn't want me to have to work that hard. So he directed my brothers and I to go to high school and then college. So that's the same kind of thing. You get parents that are saying, my son or my daughter is not going to go into manufacturing. I want them to go to college. Well, as you know, and I'm sure you've heard in your discussions with other folks, not everybody is made for a 4-year degree. But they do need some training past high school. And again, that's where we come in.
Yeah, here's the part where I really, you mentioned the shop classes that used to be in high schools. Maybe they still have some there, but my question is this: why are high schools not preparing students so that they are ready the moment that they graduate from 12th grade to be able to weld, as opposed to graduating from high school, then having to come to SWIC and learning how to weld?
I would think there are two answers to your question. One is money, and parents. Again,
money as in they can't afford the equipment in the high school on which they can train people to do modern welding?
Right. And the other thing is, again, parents. Parents want their kids, most parents want their kids to go into a four-year college. And that, in their mindset, that's what they want for their Johnny or Mary to go into. Mm-hmm. And so there's some reluctance there. And again, that's not a SWIC opinion, that's my own personal opinion.
Right. Well, this is real life. There's a fellow who I know, an older gentleman, who repairs lawnmowers. And this fellow, he was in the Korean War, so that gives you some idea of his age group. And he told me that when he was in high school, that in shop class, auto shop class, that they taught him a lot there. So much so that before he ever graduated from high school, there were already dealerships that were begging for him to come in and work in their shops. And he has made a very nice living his entire life by working on one sort of an engine or another. And I understand what you say about parents. I want you to be something better or different or not work with your hands. But nevertheless, as a society, somebody has to do it.
Oh, I agree. And I think, if you know my friend Dave Steckland, one of his favorite expressions is, you can't send your toilet to Japan to get it fixed. And the same is true, you're not going to ship your automobile somewhere else to get it fixed. And that's why those jobs are there. But again, we're finding that most of those jobs need a little bit of training beyond what they can give the student in a high school. And that's, again, where we fall in.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe I expect more out of high schools, that rather than leaving the young person at 12th grade with, okay, I spent 12, 13 years here. Now what? Now what is, well, I have to go to SIU, I have to go to SWIC, I have to go somewhere in order to actually learn how to make money.
You're talking about a societal issue again. The high schools nowadays, and education in general, the teachers are teaching students to pass tests. And that's because society demands that each school have a passing grade when it comes to certain standardized tests. And again, this is my personal opinion, not my opinion from SWIC, because my pay grade isn't that high to be able to do that. And I think if we let teachers teach the things that the students need instead of what they have to show on these various tests they have to take, I think we could perhaps go a lot farther onto that path that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, as a society, I think we really need to maybe be a little more directive of students. I mean, part of what you were talking about with your program, where you actually go out to industry and say, hey, what do you need? As opposed to just creating people without any destination for them to go to. Not everybody's a self-starter that can start their own business based upon their training.
Well, a lot of things have to do with money. It used to be, in the programs that I work with, the government allotted so much money to the individual areas that they could spend to train people in what they thought the businesses needed. Now they're going more to specialty type grants. Somebody in Washington decides that this is what you need, and so they give money not outside their regular pot of money, which is going down all the time, but for specialized grants that somebody decides is a good idea. And so there's not as much money to do to help the people that are in transition that we need. They want to see some kind of statistical analysis of what things are going to happen. We're a statistical driven society anymore. And everything from the Department of Labor to anybody else, they have to show Congress statistically this is what happened. So everything has to do with statistics. and I know you're an MBA, but pardon the expression, we have too many MBAs. Everybody wants a number. and you can't just pat somebody in the back and say, you know, this is a success. You have to give them a particular number to prove that that's happening.
I understand. I think I said to you earlier, I got the MBA and it ruined my life. You know, it wound up going into business areas where I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I enjoy doing this or some of the other things that I've done in life. But that is a process, and I think that education is actually the ability to teach people how to learn. That to me would be the most important thing that public schools can do for people, is to teach them how to learn things that they want to learn later on.
Well, I think that's true. I was fortunate enough to go to Catholic school, so we had that beaten into us. And I don't mean literally, but I mean we were.
Yes, I understand.
We were taught how to learn, and I think there still is that. And the adults that we work with that are in transition, a lot of them have that ethic. They're just either afraid to or don't have the feel they don't have the experience to succeed where they actually can. And that part of what we do is to let them know that they're not alone. You know, the average age of students at our college is, you know, in the upper 20s. So you've got a lot of the people right out of high school, but you've got a lot of people in their 30s and 40s as well.
Who have life experience.
Right.
They've seen how tough it is out there, and hey, I really do want to learn something so I can make some money.
And they're afraid when they come back to school, they're going to be sitting next to somebody that's, you know, 18 years old, you know, with body piercings and tattoos, and they're going to feel like, you know, they don't belong. Well, when they actually get to class and look around, it's more people their own age. So they find their comfort level.
So now we talked about welding, we talked about some other machining classes. Why don't you describe some of the other kind of technical areas that that SWIC can train people to do?
Well, a couple of areas that are I think not guaranteed to get somebody a job, but they've got a very, very good chance of getting a job, is any medical field. You know, anything that, as our society gets older.
You're not talking about doctors, you're talking about
nurses, you know, x-ray technicians, respiratory therapists, and even so much as people that actually work in the medical offices. You know, there's a lot of opportunity there because, unfortunately, as people get to be my age and they need doctors more, there's more openings for those type of people. The other thing, of course, is anything in the computer field. Now, one market that we found when we did studies years ago, and subsequent, I think it also is true, there's a pocket of computer jobs near Scott Air Force Base. Because the Air Force Base is so large in its headquarters, they have a lot of computers out there. And they all need to be worked on, they all need to be networked and protected.
You mean actually a technician to fix?
Exactly. You know, people that can work for the contractors that do that type of thing for the government. And there's an area, you know, in O'Fallon where if you look at the statistics, it just pops up that there's, you know, all of a sudden there's all these computer people that work close to the base, and that's the reason. Of course, part of the problem with that is those folks have to pass security clearances. And it's not just the fact they don't have a record or something like that. If somebody's been unemployed for any length of time, their credit rating is going to take a hit. They can't help it. And of course, that might prevent them from being able to work in those particular computer fields.
Credit rating has something to do with security clearances.
Well, they don't want somebody that the Russians could pay a lot of money to steal their security secrets. I mean, so it does. And I've been on some of those interviews for people that I know, and that's one of the questions they ask.
So computers, medical areas, anything else?
Manufacturing is coming back. And I think you mentioned the welding and the machining, and those areas are, they're starting to get more focused in this area again, where they hadn't been in the past. They're onshoring or bringing jobs back that they used to take to China or whatever to Mexico.
China's getting expensive now.
Right. Yeah. It's getting more expensive, plus you have to add the shipping into it.
Right.
You know, so they're coming back and they find that even paying American-style wages, it's actually cheaper. So let's hope that keeps up.
So if you were going to talk to parents, what would you be saying to them now in order to give them an idea of what their young people should be focused on?
Again, we go back to what I said at the beginning. Show up, be there on time, dress appropriately, get along with your fellow workers, and get along with your boss. If you do that, these employers will train folks to do what they need them to do. The other thing I would tell them was, not everybody is going to go to Harvard. Not everybody is going to get an advanced degree in history or a PhD and teach in the college level. Know your child and know what they want to do. And if they are interested in one of these occupations that, in your time you would think of as, I hate to use this expression, dead end, that's not the case now. They can make a good living working for a manufacturer or in a machine shop. So allow them to do that kind of thing. But also make sure that they have the proper training to get those jobs. Again, that's where SWIC comes in. You can get 2 years of training at SWIC or 18 months to get a certificate, and you fit right into those categories that these manufacturers are looking for.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to say before, and that is that manufacturing's become a very technical area. It's not like we see in the old, the old movies from the 1920s and 30s and 40s, or Rosie the Riveter. Mm-hmm. These are, your job is to really, in many cases, babysit a machine and make sure that the machine is doing this work correctly, because it can do it more and faster and better than any human being can do it.
Well, it's not the old days where you used to see people with grease from their elbow down to their hands.
Right.
Now they're, again, spotless because they don't want the computer to get dirty. And they're, as you said, they're working with those. There is an area where they need to have that physical aspect to it, but mostly it's telling the computer to do the smart thing and do what the computer does best.
Mm-hmm. We're down here to probably the last minute or so of 30 seconds. So is there any last words here, 30 seconds worth, that you want to offer?
Well, I think the people that I deal with in transition, if I could wave a wand and just have, people give them a little bit of financial assistance to get them started, they can be successful. And just understand they're different than a kid right out of high school. They have different ways of looking at things. They've been there before and either failed or had a job pulled out from under them. They just need a little bit of a push. And that's what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for coming and spending some time with us today. I really appreciate your coming here today. SWIC, yeah, that used to be Belleville Area College for the oldsters, just so that they know we're talking about the same thing.
That's the same thing, and it was, that's because we expanded beyond. This was before my time. Mm-hmm. They expanded beyond Belleville to Granite City into Redbud, so it's.
Well, I got to say goodbye to these folks here. Thanks for watching. Bill Gagen is with Southwestern Illinois College. You learned a lot here today. Tell your friends, look this up on YouTube and show it to them. Thanks. See you next time.